Today, let's talk about 5 ways that you can subtly grow your LinkedIn network. Grab your cup of tea and let's dive into it. Expanding your network on LinkedIn doesn't always have to be this loud exercise in having a strong voice on the networking platform. It can actually be something that you can do really organically and something that people who are potentially a little bit more introverted or don't like to put themselves out there as overtly can actually still do. So let's talk about some of the ways that you can do that. Tip number 1 is to SEO your LinkedIn posts. Sometimes networking isn't always about who you know, but about who knows you. And by SEOing your LinkedIn post or search engine optimizing your LinkedIn post, then you become discoverable to other people. Now, in relation to your LinkedIn posts, I'm not talking about having a really sophisticated SEO strategy. I'm just talking about simply understanding what the key phrases are or the key phrase that you want to be able to align with for your professional personal brand. What is that piece of real estate that you want to own in other people's minds? So instead of when you are posting having to pull up this really exhaustive list of your SEO words that you are trying to target, you just know that you always want your post as organically as possible to reference particular things. By doing that time and time again, you are going to be able to tell the platform that you want to align to that thing, and you're going to be more discoverable for that particular field of expertise. Now, things like hashtags, for example, are starting to become a lot more irrelevant on platforms just because the technology in relation to searchability has just changed a lot, and the platforms now are able to understand more what it is that you are talking about because it is able to understand what it is that you're saying in your post, for example. But for some platforms, it is becoming a lot less chic to include things like hashtags. On X, for example, it's not as popular as it once was, and I think Elon, from memory, even tweeted about it being just a really outdated thing to do. I can't remember exactly what he said. But I think on platforms like LinkedIn, unless that becomes more of a trend, it's probably not going to hurt to at least include the hashtag of what it is that you want to target. I just make sure that I try and keep this to no more than 3 hashtags for each post. My tip number 2 is to SEO your LinkedIn profile. So this is where your SEO strategy for your LinkedIn presence is going to get a little bit more sophisticated, because this is where you would ideally be thinking about multiple words that you want to be targeting or multiple phrases and integrating that as organically as possible into various sections of your profile. So this is where you might want to actually write down the keywords that you want to target as a part of your career development, as a part of your professional development. What do you most want to align with? And then integrate that through your profile. And some of the key places that you could do this is through your headline, making sure that you are adding some of those keywords or key phrases into your LinkedIn profile headline. You can integrate this through your About Me. You can have potentially a few more references in there because you have a little bit more room to play with in that section. You can integrate this into the descriptions of your roles and make sure that you are using some of the key phrases that you want to target, and you can also integrate this into your skills as well. There's probably going to be other areas that you can integrate this into as well. There's lots of sections that you can add to LinkedIn profiles. So whenever you are actually putting down information into those sections, just keep in mind the words that you want to target. Again, this is about creating discoverability for your professional personal brand. So it's not always about you having to put yourself out there. It's about creating a magnet for people to be able to discover you and your expertise without you having to always feel like you have to be the loudest voice on the platform or be really consistent on the platform. You can still at least have an opportunity for people to be able to find you and connect with you. Also keep in mind that LinkedIn has one of the highest domain authority authorities of any website. So this means, for example, that a site like Google really trusts LinkedIn. So when someone is searching maybe for a particular thing, maybe they're looking for someone who has a particular skill set, or they're looking for a service or a product maybe even, then if they happen to be searching that on their Google instead of actually going directly to LinkedIn, if they just happen to go through that journey instead, then LinkedIn is more likely going to be able to show up for them as a result because it has such a high domain authority. This is where you might find, for example, that if you have your own website for your business or for your personal brand, that LinkedIn may actually still have a higher ranking in SEO when people are searching for your name, for example. Tip number 3 is to engage with industry influencers. Now, you may want to do this with mega influencers on LinkedIn, but what I do think is that in that scenario, it can be slightly less effective just because of the flood of comments that are on posts for really high profile people on LinkedIn. But you might like to think about this in terms of people that are a little bit more of, maybe micro influencers in their industry, or maybe a little bit closer to home. Maybe they're in your area, for example. But by engaging with industry influencers, you are connecting with their audience. So keep in mind that an influencer has become an influencer usually because they have created a community around a particular topic or expertise or interest or their personality. Now, if you also align with that particular topic, expertise, or interest, then you can tap into their audience who are already actively interested in that particular thing. So instead of trying to go out cold to people that maybe aren't interested in your particular field of expertise, you are engaging in a community where people are already switched on to that particular thing. And this isn't about just forcefully or really robotically leaving comments on influencers' posts. This is about really leaving thoughtful things on there that shows your interest in what it is that they have had to say, your genuine interest, and perhaps your own personal perspective as well that you can bring to the conversation. My tip number 4 is to connect in niche communities. Now, if you are someone who perhaps doesn't feel as confident putting yourself out there and sending invites to strangers, then keep in mind a concept called the similarity principle. This is something that I learned about in Catherine Caputa's book, You Are a Brand, where she talks about this idea of the similarity principle being a way for you to perhaps increase your likability, or this ability to be able to create connections based on common ground. In the book, she says, finding common ground or relevance is a good networking tool, and it also influences likability. We like people who are similar to us in some way, whether it is personality, lifestyle, political beliefs, or old school ties. So one of the ways that you might be able to implement some of this thinking in LinkedIn is to connect on groups. Maybe these are private groups that have an interest in something that you have a relationship with. So maybe you are a person with a particular field of expertise and you can find a group related to that thing. Or maybe these are connections that you already really naturally have through your experience. For example, I think the really great one is the reference to the alumni network for your university or your college, or maybe even your school that you may have gone to. Because if you are connecting with people based on that common ground, then when they are to look at your profile, then they will see immediately, hopefully, that you are someone that they share some sort of similarity with. They might go, well, I might not have known that person directly, but I appreciate that we studied around the same time in the same place, and they might feel comfortable connecting with you in that way. And for you, if you're someone who doesn't like putting yourself out there, it might be a way to feel like you are a little bit more comfortable in connecting based on that similarity principle. Similar to the previous conversation about commenting on people's posts, this is something that you can also take into these private groups. So you can actually also leave meaningful comments that you've actually thought about and provide value and a unique perspective on posts that are in that community. And people will start to also recognize you in that space as well. And similarly, they might want to connect with you directly. You might actually receive invitations as a result of this. And my tip number 5 is to convert connections across platforms. Your LinkedIn network doesn't actually have to start on LinkedIn. So take note of all of the various touch points that you have as a part of your personal brand, or that you have maybe even personally, and think about if there is a call to action to have people connect with you on LinkedIn, or where this might be appropriate, where you might want it. For example, you might have your own personal brand website, you might have a business website, you might have a podcast, a YouTube channel, a blog, you might publish on websites like Medium or Substack, but do a bit of an audit of all of your different platforms and make sure that LinkedIn is clearly a part of the call to action, so that you are converting audiences that you are establishing or growing on those platforms into your network on LinkedIn as well, and you're building your relationships there too. If you want to learn more details about how you can SEO your LinkedIn profile, then check out my previous episode on this topic. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.